Gods are real. At least they are in D&D and many other fantasy worlds, unequivocally wielding vast, world-ending power. But that's not the wildest thing. What's crazy is that somehow nobody freaking cares, and it's making your campaign setting less engaging than it should be. So if you have clerics, paladins, cultists, or really anyone, villain or hero, channeling divine power, you have a massive source of untapped stories in your campaign, because a great pantheon sets up amazing world building, divine curveballs, and epic stakes. But first, you must destroy your weak gods and rebuild them better. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how. In Dungeons & Dragons, divine power is funneled through everyday folk, like paladins and clerics, to achieve the gods' goals. This is such a popular setup, it's infiltrated the fantasy zeitgeist. Basically, it's super common. But so many games treat gods like a magical vending machine. Players offer prayers, then receive magical spells, until they hit their limit for the day. Not very magical or mystical, and certainly not very exciting. But when you give your gods a voice, personality, and goals, you transform them from a game mechanic into the capricious, unknowable forces that hold your worlds together or threaten to tear it apart. So what are your options when it comes to world-building gods? Well, there are a few common models for your divine setup: the Greek drama, the Ineffables, and the Animistic route. The most common D&D gods are based on the ancient Greek, Norse, Celtic pantheon model. They're a nosy, interrelated dynasty of family drama and petty squabbles. All cosmically powerful teenagers, basically. This is a really solid setup for most D&D and similar RPGs because it gives you a lot of interpersonal drama, godly schisms, and intrigue. You can calibrate how lofty or base their goals are to match your mood and themes. Then there are the Ineffables, the mystical, detached, cosmic, or even eldritch forces. Mortals are so small and alien that you are incomprehensible to them. If you want ineffable gods to get involved with your campaign, you'll probably need intermediaries, like angels and saints, who run the actual mortal communications network. Otherwise, they're rather too ineffable to deal with directly, more like a force of nature than a personality, and not really likely to get directly involved. They do, on the other hand, make great vision and prophecy machines, and if you want vague, mysterious, and detached, this ineffability is what you should lean into. And on the other hand, you get the animistic deity setup. Basically, in these worlds, everything in nature has a spirit. Mountains, rivers, that tree over there, what have you. These kinds of gods are heavily tied to nature and usually very localized, which can be good for variety when your party is location hopping. They're also naturally tiered, like your PCs, because the greater the geographical landmark, the more powerful they tend to be. Level 1, protect the grove spirit. Level 20, appease the literal goddamn continent. This power scale can make them excellent for encounters, patrons, and campaign conflicts. If you want to dig a little deeper, what about the origin of your gods? Don't get bogged down with this unless it's useful for your themes, though. Are they interplanar beings or born of primordial forces? Maybe they're the children of forgotten gods who came before. Either way, you now know which god types will fit your campaign. But how do you keep them from taking over your campaign? Well, I'm so glad you asked, because a good smite is satisfying. Just ask any paladin. So why aren't your super powerful gods just smiting people themselves? Well, honestly, it's for power scope reasons, because literal gods will make your PCs feel like meager, insignificant ants. And on the other hand, it's hard to keep your gods feeling divine and mysterious when PCs get up close and personal. A great example of this gone wrong is Xena Warrior Princess, where the gods were so present and active, they seemed more like grumpy teenagers than divine entities. So how do you explain why your gods aren't getting involved directly? Well, you have some options. In the official lore of Forgotten Realms, Lord Aor. Anyway, the big boss has decreed that gods should be worshipped by mortals, but they aren't supposed to be kings over them. Basically, the boss says so. Or what about a god pact? Because when deities fight, mortals get squished. Perhaps your gods made a pact not to manifest in order to protect the mortal realm. They must work remotely through mortals, angels, omens, dream sequences, and similar mystical means. Or it might be that it's too darn risky to enter the mortal realm. Perhaps gods become mortal themselves, vulnerable to swords and the excruciating passage of time. So they use avatars and angels to do their mortal chores for them. And especially for animistic gods, they might only have power in the spirit realm. That means they can manifest using spirit means, but not physically. Animistic gods will also have geographical limitations tied to their spiritual location. And then again, the gods have a lot on, don't you know? Maybe they delegate for day-to-day tasks, like justice, vengeance, or collecting souls. They only get involved with universe-level threats. Be careful with that one though, because it can make your adventures feel less important in the grand scheme of things. And players do so like to feel important. Okay, so that's why they're not getting involved. But what do they care about? Well, let's talk domains. Because gods and pantheons are a chance to reinforce the core themes of your world building. What's important to them? What do they champion? Or from a world building perspective, what do you want to put focus on? Do you really need a god of agriculture? Or 3 gods of magic? Well, a great place to start is your world's theme and foundations in your world building meta. Because that's the stuff you've already defined is important, so make some gods to champion it. If the rules of your world include screwy seasons like Game of Thrones, probably a nature goddess is really important to the people who live here. If species tensions are a focal point, maybe each species has their own gods. In fact, that might be the only excuse for having 3 separate gods for the same darn thing. And gods can be used to define aspects of your world. In Dungeons & Dragons, good versus evil and law versus chaos are rules of the world. They're forces like gravity. So it makes sense that gods must be defined on that spectrum. You need the full set to keep the balance. Next up, what's important for your genre? In a post-apocalyptic world, they're not likely to have a god of civilization. But in a world of early cities, and copper merchants, they probably will. Beyond that, a good spread of divine portfolios is what serves your vision and what's fun for your players. There is a certain satisfaction to matching players with deities, just so. A few standard categories to get you started are the basic mortal concerns, stuff like life and death, rules of the world, civilization, and the natural elements. Sea gods, sky gods, that kind of thing. But the way you combine these domains into a single god also speaks volumes. For example, is your war god tied to honor or to carnage? Is your god of love associated with the sea or the sun? These different associations create nuance and character for your gods. Build off them to craft your god's characters and the myths that surround them. For that, use the character template on World Anvil. It has a whole set of prompts designed specifically for creating deities, so you can make each feel unique and memorable. And use a family tree or a content tree to create the structure of who's related to whom in your pantheon and who's in charge, so you don't get mixed up at the gaming table. And of course, when you're dealing with personalities, it's only a matter of time until we get into diplomacy, or possibly violence. Either way, there's drama to be had. Because gods spin cosmic drama on an epic scale. Like Hera wreaking wrath on Zeus, or proxy wars. According to myth, the Trojan War kicked off because Paris and Helen got pulled into a very badly advised divine beauty contest. Plenty of stories show gods being petty, jealous, and quixotic. If they're like that, why would they not pull your players into their squabbles? And even if your god's goals are loftier, like improving mortal lives, balancing the force, or vanquishing evil, they still need mortals to do the dirty work on the mortal plane, as we covered before. To that end, it can be helpful to map out how your gods feel about one another. They might be rivals or divinely opposed, struggling to maintain the balance, or they might have a parent-child relationship. We all know how challenging those can be. All of these relationships will gear up the potential drama and quest hooks for your world. Now let's be clear. Your players don't need to know why 2 deities are fighting, especially if you're trying to keep them ineffable and awe-inspiring. But it's helpful for you as the game master to know. And you can use it. It's a seed you can plant and grow across one or multiple campaigns before a big reveal. And while we're on the subject of awe and wonder, how exactly do your rank and file mortals express devotion to the gods? And what are the gods getting out of it? Well, mechanically, your RPG system probably defines this, but narratively, it usually ties into their origins. One popular approach is that gods pop into existence through the power of belief, and they're powered by faith from their followers. This is the way most Dungeons & Dragons pantheons work, and it makes faith a kind of capitalism or pyramid scheme. Another option is that gods don't need belief, but, you know, they appreciate it. In that case, mortal faith might feed their vanity, or raise their status among the other gods. Or it may simply prove a mortal's worth to receive divine aid, like a divine job application. And finally, for some gods, faith might be more about teaching the path to enlightenment. The god may see believers as students, as candidates for ascendance and communion. After all, it can be lonely at the top. So if you want to world build a pantheon with the power to fuel stories, it needs to feel like an authentic part of your world. Your gods need reasons to get involved, and also reasons they don't just handle everything themselves. Build them cleverly by adjusting their power, domain, and emotional distance from the material world. And you'll have gods your players are fascinated to know more about, and that will drive your stories. But of course, gods and pantheons, they're only half the story when it comes to religion. And the other half, the mortal true believers, that's where a lot of real drama lives. For that, watch this next video. It reveals which questions you need to answer first, and it'll transform the way you think about world-building fantasy religions. I'll see you over there, and in the meantime, grab your hammer and go world build.